to another evening of soft echoes and timeless calm. Tonight, our story drifts across still water and folds itself quietly into your memory. This tale is called The Paper Swan of Elarra Lake. It's not a children's tale. It's for you who once made wishes with folded notes, who have felt the sting of beauty that cannot last, and who have loved something too delicate to hold forever. Let yourself drift. Let the hush of the lake meet the hush of your breath. Once upon a time, deep in the heart of a forest, there lived a young woman named Elarra. She was known throughout the land for her grace and elegance, much like a swan gliding across a lake. One day, while walking by the lake, she noticed a small boat in the middle of the water, and when she looked closer, she saw a beautiful swan made out of paper. The swan was white and delicate, and its eyes were made out of two shiny buttons. Elarra was so mesmerized by the sight that she couldn't help but smile. She had never seen anything so beautiful before, and in that moment, she knew that she had to have it. Elarra Lake was not marked on most maps. It lay hidden beyond fields of golden rye and canopies of whispering willow, their long, thin branches dipping into the water, their leaves creating a thick, emerald green mist that clung to the surface. The lake was an oval of purest white, framed by dark, brooding pines. Its shores were steep and stony, rising abruptly from the water's edge, forming natural amphitheaters that caught the mist and held it close. No breeze ever ruffled its surface. No leaf, no ripple disturbed its placidity. The villagers said a single paper swan had floated on its waters for over 50 years. They said it was tied to a young girl's unfulfilled wish, a wish that had turned to stone in her heart and become a curse upon the land. I came across this storybook while visiting a local antique shop, and I thought, what a perfect way to introduce you all to Elarra Lake. Though this piece was written in the early 1900s, the words still hold so much power. The author paints such a vivid picture with just a few simple strokes. We feel the isolation of the lake, the secrecy it holds, and we're intrigued enough to want to explore it ourselves. And now, thanks to the magic of audiobooks, we can. Narrated by the wonderful, the audio version brings the story to life with even more depth and detail. Conjures images so real you can almost reach out and touch them. The whispering willows, the paper swan, the mists that cling to the pines. I don't want to spoil the ending for those of you who haven't listened yet, but let me just say this: the last 2 minutes are pure magic. It's one of those endings that makes you want to listen to the whole story again right away. Ready to dive into the full story? Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Long ago, in the village of Sorrentha, which lay at the edge of a still, misty lake, there lived a woman named Amara. Amara was a maker of origami, but not just any kind. For as she folded, her nimble fingers wove memory into delicate, swirling shapes, each fold a poem that spoke of lives long past. Her hands were slender, always stained with ink, and when the twilight deepened, her eyes saw the shape of sorrow before it even spoke. For she lived beside Elarra Lake, where all who came to weep laid their troubles on its silent breast. And day by day, their grief became part of its still water, carried on its surface like fallen leaves in the endless wind. But the saddest tale that ever touched her heart, or so it seemed, was not another's, but her own. For deep in her soul, a love for a wandering poet named Callan burned brighter than the midday sun, yet never truly warmed her hands. For though they had met in the bloom of youth and shared a joy as boundless as the lake itself, Each year he promised to stay and build a life beside her, and their whispered hopes took flight on the wings of birds. Yet each fall he turned and walked away, chasing the verses in his heart. And this he did year after year, until the seasons became a dirge of unending goodbyes. And still, each time his cloak brushed against her skin, her heart soared like a kite in the wind, believing that this time he would stay. So it came to pass that one autumn evening, just before the first frost, Elarra sat alone in her cottage, beside a table piled high with colorful papers and half-folded swans. In her hands, a crisp white sheet trembled as she fought to master her most ambitious work. Yet despite her deft fingers and steady breath, her creation refused to take shape. For how could she fold something that had no end? Then suddenly, as if pulled by invisible strings, her hands stilled, and she found herself reaching for a familiar, crumpled letter. Once again, she traced the faded ink and felt the memories stirring within her like a half-forgotten dream. It was a letter from Callan, written many years ago on the eve of his departure. "My love," it began, and then her gaze fell on the blank space below those words. Slowly, carefully, she unfolded the letter and wrote only 3 words: "Come back home." When she finished, she dipped her pen into a pool of crimson ink and signed it simply, Marara. Now, having poured her final hope into the paper, she rose and went to the lake. With hands as steady as the northern star, she folded the letter into the shape of a swan. Then, gazing at its graceful form, she whispered, "Go now, my love, and bring me back an answer." And with that, she placed the swan gently into the lake and watched it drift away, borne aloft on the wind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the water, she turned and walked home, leaving the swan to make its way across the lake. And though the wind grew fierce and rain began to fall, the paper bird remained unmoved. Yet when the morning light returned, the swan was gone, and Callan never came back. Year after year, season after season, the villagers of Sorrentha came to watch the swans arrive, then disappear into the mists of Elarra Lake. And each spring, when the first buds appeared on the trees, they hoped that this time it would carry Callan's reply. But time, like the relentless tide, kept pushing forward, carrying the memory of the paper swan further and further out to sea. And soon, in the hushed corners of the town, people forgot Amara's name altogether. They forgot the tragic tale of the origami artist who had loved a wandering poet and sent her hopes adrift on the endless wind. They forgot because the world does that to those left behind. It lets the grieving fade from memory until the pain becomes bearable, and the only trace of it is a whisper in the heart. And Elarra Lake, oh, it held on to that whisper and more. For the swan remained, unmoved by wind, untouched by time, and glowing softly under the moonlight, as if waiting for a reply. Decades passed, the cottage stood empty, the garden wild and overgrown, and the paper swan, well, it still floats. One such day, an old traveler arrived in the village, quiet and thin, with a poet's voice and trembling hands. He stood by the lake and whispered her name. And as he did, the swan turned and floated toward him just once, before coming to rest in his outstretched palm. Then he left. He left nothing behind but his journal, sealed in a hollow log. And when the villagers discovered it, the last entry read, "Some promises take a lifetime to return. I have waited too long for mine, but I will wait no longer. For today I saw her. Yes, the swan brought her to me, And though she looked upon me with eyes as deep and still as the lake itself, I knew she had been waiting too. So I am going now to follow her into the sunset and find my answer in the stars. Mayhap we will meet again beneath the willow tree, or mayhap we will wander side by side along the riverbank. But if our paths do not align again, know this, my love, you are the verse that set my soul alight. You are the melody that haunts my waking dreams. You are the star that guides me through the darkest night. Thank you for the origami of memory, for the echoes of our laughter still ring in my ears. Thank you for the paper swan, and the swan still floats. Many years later, a young girl wandered down to the lake with a basket of brightly colored papers and ribbons. She stood by the water's edge, watching the sunlight dance on the surface, and began to fold. She didn't know who Amara was, or why her name echoed in the whisper of the wind. But as the scent of honeysuckle filled her senses, she felt a connection to the woman whose spirit still lingered by the lake. And as she folded, she made a wish. Oh, to be able to fold the very moonlight and send it sailing across the water. To fold the whisper of the wind and give it wings. To fold a piece of one's own heart and trust that it would return. When the sun dipped below the horizon, she rose and walked away, leaving her creations behind, and in the morning they were gone. But the swan, well, it remained, as if folded from moonlight and stitched together with stardust. And so it is said that sometimes a wish does come true. It just takes a little longer than you might expect. And now, with the last rays of sun setting over the hills, casting long shadows and a blush of pink upon the clouds, it is time for our final story of the night. This is the Paper Swan of Elarra Lake, a tale as old as the hills themselves and as timeless as the stars above. Gather close, dear listeners, and let the magic of this ancient story envelop you like a warm blanket on a cold winter's night. Once upon a time, nestled between rolling hills and whispering reeds, there existed a lake known as Elarra, and this was no ordinary lake. Oh no, for Elarra was a place of enchantment, a sanctuary where the earthly realm intertwined with the ethereal, where dreams took flight and the impossible became possible. In the heart of this mystical lake resided a family of swans, their feathers as white as the driven snow, their grace a sight to behold. But these swans were no ordinary birds. They were, in fact, transformed princes, cursed by an evil witch to live out their days in swan form, doomed to roam the earth until a maiden of pure heart set them free. Now, every full moon, when the silvery light bathed the lake in its ethereal glow, one brave soul would venture to Elarra's shore, a young woman named Elarra, who yearned to break the curse and set the swans, especially one particular swan, a beautiful white swan with eyes like sapphires, free from their watery prison. Each night she would perform an ancient ritual, a dance of moonlight and water, hoping to attract the attention of the enchanted birds. And her devotion did not go unnoticed. For one fateful night, as the full moon hung heavy in the star-studded sky, the white swan approached Elarra, and in a voice that echoed the wisdom of ages past, spoke to her, "O kind Elarra, your heart's pure intentions have reached us, and we are eternally grateful. But to break our curse, you must journey to the depths of Whisperwood, find the elusive moonstone, and return before the first rays of dawn touch the horizon." With that, the swan disappeared into the moonlit lake, leaving Elarra both excited and apprehensive. Yet her heart was resolute, and so she embarked on her quest, venturing deep into the mystical forest, where gnarled trees twisted towards the heavens and the very air hummed with magic. There she met talking animals, mischievous fairies, and wise old tree spirits who aided her on her way. Finally, deep within the forest, she discovered a clearing bathed in moonlight, and in its center, a shimmering stone that pulsed with otherworldly power, the moonstone. But as Elarra reached out to touch it, a chorus of voices echoed through the trees. Beware, mortal, for the moonstone's magic comes at a price. And as the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky, Elarra realized she had only moments to make her choice. Would she sacrifice her humanity to become the moonstone's eternal guardian, or return home and break the swan's curse? Torn between her desire for love and her duty to the natural world, Elarra made her choice. And as the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, she emerged from the forest, forever changed by her extraordinary adventure. And so our story ends, not with a definitive happily ever after, but with the promise of new beginnings, the hope that no matter how dark the night, the sun will rise again. Thank you for letting your heart drift across Elarra Lake tonight. If this story stirred something sleeping in you, perhaps a name, a time, a feeling, hold it close and rest easy. Please like, comment with your own memory, and subscribe to float again with us soon. Until then, may your wishes fold gently and your dreams never sink.